Please join me in welcoming State Senator Art Linares.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Connecticut Republicans. It's an honor to be here tonight. Senate Minority Leader Len Fasano, House Minority Leader Themis Claridis, Chairman Jerry Labriola, and distinguished guests, I have the honor of introducing to you a leader not only in political discussion, but in our nation. Like my family, his family came to this great country in search of a better life, and now he is working hard to make the lives of every American better. He has ignited excitement and enthusiasm within our party. He is inspiring people of all ages and backgrounds. This is a man who has a clear vision for the future of our country. He is a firm believer in American exceptionalism. He understands the importance in restoring our nation's standing around the world. A man who believes that America's greatness is found not within the halls of Washington's bureaucracy, but in the work ethic of the American people. He knows that America's greatness can be found in our dreams. He knows that America's greatness can be found in hard work and innovation, and most importantly, he loves this country of ours. My friends, I'm humbled and honored to introduce to you a fellow American of Cuban descent, my former boss. Ladies and gentlemen, Connecticut Republicans, the Honorable Senator from Florida and candidate for President of the United States of America, Marco Rubio.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope you clap after I speak too. We'll see how this goes. But, Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you here today. Thank you for that introduction, Art. We're very, very proud of you. Art was an intern in my office, seems just like a couple of years ago. And now we're so proud of what he's doing and what he's going to do. And it's great to be with you. It's also great to be with Larry Kudlow. I know he's here. I spoke to him a few moments ago. Someone that we've enjoyed watching over the years. And Joe Scarborough is here. Joe Scarborough is from Florida. And we are proud that he's from Florida. Joe, I don't know if you know this, the Morning Joe is the pregame show in the Senate gym. So it's on every morning as these guys are working out, and you know, these different folks that are in there at the time. And when Joe speaks, we cheer him on, and when some of the other people speak, the other team cheers him on. So at least we have one guy on that stage, and we're glad that you're here tonight, Joe. And I want to thank all of you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to you today. It's now been over 7 weeks since I began this campaign, and you know, at virtually every event that we do, I meet someone or I see something that reminds me of my parents. Their journey is the reason why I'm able to stand before you today as candidate for president. They were both born to poor families on the island of Cuba, into a society like most societies that have ever existed, where your future was decided by what your parents did before you. But see, they wanted more for themselves. And so in May of 1956, they left their homeland and came to America. Their early years in this country were not easy. They arrived with no money, very little education, but they persevered, and in time they found good jobs. My father became a bartender at a hotel just like this, at events just like this. My mother worked as a cashier, she was a maid, she was even a stock clerk at Kmart. Eventually, they earned enough money to do things like buy a home in a safe and stable neighborhood, and raise 4 kids, and retire with dignity and security, and most important of all, to leave us, their children, better off than themselves. My parents were never rich, but they were successful because just a few years removed from poverty and despair, they achieved a happy life. They achieved what has come to be known as the American dream. When I tell that story, I'm often reminded that I do not come from privilege. And if by privilege people mean money or fame, they're right. My parents, for example, never made enough to save for my education. So I had over $100,000 in student loans, which I just finished paying off a couple years ago. That's how I felt. Yeah. I finished paying it off a couple years ago with the proceeds of my book, An American Son, now available on paperback. I didn't inherit any money or any real estate from my parents. Even now I have a mortgage that still takes up a significant amount of our family budget. And yet I consider myself to be a child of privilege, because I was raised in a stable home by 2 parents who loved each other and were married, and who taught us and 2 parents who taught me that there was no dream too big or goal too high, even for the son of a bartender and a maid, because I was an American. Now, my parents' life and their journey reminds me that it was possible for them to do these things because they lived in America during the American century. The 20th century, a century where America led the world to confront and defeat evil on 2 occasions. A century driven by an American economy that produced the best companies, the best jobs, and the best ideas in the entire world. And a century in which America was the one place on earth where anyone willing to work hard could achieve the universal dream of a better life. But the world is different now. The early years of this new century is the most significant period of change since the Industrial Revolution. For much of the 20th century, America had limited international competition. But now we are engaged in a massive global competition for the best companies, the best talent, the best ideas, and the best jobs. For much of the 20th century, we had plenty of good-paying jobs, even for people like my parents who had a limited education. But now many of those jobs don't pay enough, or they've been replaced by machines. For much of the 20th century, world affairs were defined by world wars and by the competition between the Soviet Union and the free world led by the United States. But now it's autocratic governments in Iran and China and Russia, rogue states like North Korea, and radical jihadists throughout the world that define the global challenge to peace, to prosperity, and to liberty. And these changes are disrupting every aspect of our lives, leaving a growing number of our people with a sense of anxiety about today, but also uncertainty about the future. Because while it is clear that the old ways of doing things no longer work, our government leaders have not shown us what the new way of doing things should be. Today we have millions of hardworking families who are living paycheck to paycheck. But the only answer our outdated leaders have for them is the idea of hiking taxes on the wealthy and raising the minimum wage by just a few dollars. We have millions of young Americans who now, like I did, owe thousands of dollars in student loans, but they owe them for degrees that have not led to jobs. And the only answer that our outdated leaders have is to slightly lower the monthly payment on their loans. For the first time in 35 years, we have more businesses dying than starting. And the only answer our outdated leaders have is to push for more regulations. And on the global stage, China and Russia and Iran increasingly dominate important regions of the world. And radical jihadists are taking cities that were once liberated at the price of American lives and stealing the weapons that we left behind in the process. Our allies no longer trust us. And yet our outdated leaders, they do things like pursue a reset with Russia and a deal with Iran. They slash military spending and weaken our intelligence programs. They slander allies like Israel and refuse to call radical Islam by its name. We have arrived at a hinge moment in our history. One era is ending, and a new one is beginning. And the time has come for a new generation of leaders to guide us in our transition from the past we are so proud of to the exciting future that awaits our country. Because I believe that despite our many challenges, we are just one election away from a new American century. And that's why I'm running for president. You see, today, while almost two-thirds of Americans make less money than they did in 2002, the cost of living keeps rising. As president, we will take actions to increase the paychecks of our people and reduce their bills. And here's how. First, we will have new tax policies that say to employers that the more you pay your workers, the less you will owe the IRS. We will help working families raising children to keep more of their hard-earned money so they can deal with the rising cost of living. And we will lead the world in producing oil and natural gas so that both your electric bill and your gasoline bill go down. Today, because of automation and because of technology, we have millions of Americans who find themselves either out of work or stuck in low-paying jobs. But when I'm president, we will spur the creation of better-paying jobs of the future, and we will equip our people with the skills they need to fill them. And here's how. First, instead of pushing everyone to go to a traditional college, we want to invest more in vocational education to give people more opportunities. To give people more opportunities to work in a trade, as a welder, as an electrician, as an auto technician, as a plumber. These are good paying jobs, and I do not understand why we have stigmatized them. We need flexible educational programs that award degrees based on what you've learned and what you know, not how many hours you sat in the classroom. So that older students who have to work full-time can also go back to school and acquire the skills they need for a better paying job. And for every student in America, we will help prevent loans for degrees that do not lead to jobs. And here's how. Before you take out a student loan, the college you're attending will be required to tell you how much people make when they graduate from that school with a degree that you're seeking. So you can decide whether you want to major in Greek philosophy, because according to the latest statistics, the market for Greek philosophers has tightened significantly over the last 2,000 years. You know, today, because of higher taxes and out-of-control regulations, it is harder than ever to start a business and to succeed. But when I'm president, we will make our country the single best place in the world to start a new business. If you are trying to start a small business out of the spare bedroom of your home or using the free Wi-Fi at McDonald's, we will lower the corporate and the small business tax rate to a level that makes us competitive with other nations. For small businesses, for the whole economy, we are going to have a hard cap on how many regulations the federal government can impose on our economy and its costs. And here's an important message for new businesses and small businesses. When I'm president, if you will give us a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate, we will repeal and replace Obamacare before it repeals and replaces you. Today, because our economy isn't growing fast enough and isn't producing enough good jobs, we have millions of young Americans who are stuck with student loans, as I talked about earlier, and that degree that doesn't lead to a job. But when I am president, we're going to put in place policies that allow our economy to grow, compete, and create the jobs that people go to school for. First, we're going to lower taxes on investment so that the more people an employer hires, the less they'll pay in taxes. Through a combination of growth and spending reforms, we will balance our budget so that young Americans will not be burdened with a runaway national debt. And for young Americans, here's one more promise we need to keep. We will reform and save Social Security and Medicare so that they will exist for you when you retire. Today we have outdated leaders who have come to believe that government is actually more important than family, and as a result, our values and our culture are eroding. But when I'm president, we will have a government that strengthens the family rather than competes with it, and a president who encourages our values rather than try to replace them. We will remove the marriage penalty in our tax code. We will redesign our anti-poverty programs so that they cure poverty through education, responsibility, and work. And I will appoint judges and an attorney general that will protect our Second Amendment rights and defend those who hold traditional values from discrimination and harassment. And finally, today, because we have leaders who think America can no longer afford to be the most powerful nation on earth, our nation's influence has declined. The world has become more dangerous, and our people and our interests are less secure. But when I'm president, we will be trusted by our allies and respected by our enemies. For starters, we will end the dangerous cuts to our military. We will work with our allies to deal with the threats posed by China and Russia and Iran and by radical jihad. And there will be no doubt on anyone's mind that this nation will do whatever it takes to help the nation of Israel prosper as a Jewish state. If we do these things, this is the bright future that's before us. A strong America with strong values and good jobs and a healthy economy. This is the future we can build together. And that's why this election is not about what laws we're going to pass. The fundamental issue in 2016 is the question of what kind of country are we going to be in this new century. At the turn of the 19th century, a generation of Americans harnessed the power of the industrial age, and they transformed our country. And the 20th century became the American century. And now the time has come for this generation to lead the way towards a new American century. Before us now is the opportunity to author the greatest chapter yet in the amazing story of America. But we can't do this by going back to the leaders and the ideas of the past. We must change the decisions we are making. And the best way to do that is by changing the people who are making them. And ultimately, that's why I'm running for president. There are those who've suggested that I should have waited my turn. That's the same thing they said back in 2009 when I ran for the Senate against the then Republican governor in the state of Florida. And he was beating me in the bowls by 60 points and outraising me 10-1. Had the entire Republican establishment in Washington and in Florida on his side. The only people that thought I could win all lived in my home. 4 of them were under the age of 10. But then, and again now, I chose to run because I knew that the future is now. And if we keep promoting the same leaders, we're going to be left behind by the future. There are those who claim that I'm too young or haven't been in government long enough. I heard that too, the same thing I heard when I set out as Speaker of the Florida House to enact an agenda built on 100 innovative ideas that came from our people, not from our politicians. And yet we balanced our budget without raising taxes. And we improved our school standards without Common Core. And the truth is, I'm 44 years old, but I feel 45. And I may not have been around as long as some of the people that are around, but I've been around long enough to know that the old way of doing things isn't working anymore. I've even heard some suggest that I might not be rich enough to be president. And it's true, I didn't make over $11 million last year giving speeches to special interests. I don't have a family foundation that raised over $2 billion from Wall Street and foreign interests. And you know, while we are truly blessed, Jeanette and I keep an eye on our family budget because we want to send our kids to Christian schools. We have to pay our mortgage. But the biggest debt I have is to America. This isn't the country that I grew up in alone. This is literally the nation that changed the history of my family. When my father was 9 years old, he lost his mother. And he had to leave school and he had to go to work. And he never went back to school. And he worked for the next 70 years of his life. Now, when my father was young, he had big dreams too. But they became impossible for him. And the very purpose of his life was to give us the chance to do the things he never could. And so he worked as a banquet bartender in a room not dissimilar to this one. On nights, on weekends, on holidays, on days I am sure he didn't want to work, he worked. He was grateful for the work he had. But that was not the future he wanted for us. He stood behind a portable bar in the back of a room like this for all those years. So one day I could stand before you on an evening like this. The thing is, and that journey from behind that bar to behind this podium here tonight, that journey is the essence of the American dream. But the thing is that this is not just my story. As Americans, this is our story. For here, virtually every single one of us is but a generation or two removed from someone who made our future the purpose of their lives. And what it reminds us of is that whether or not we remain a special country will depend on whether or not that journey is still possible for the people that are trying to make it now. You know, almost 6 decades ago, this nation turned the page on the past, and it chose to pursue a new frontier. They accepted the challenge to ask not what their country could do for them, but what they could do for their country. The truth is that for far too long, leaders in both parties have asked for your vote on the promise of what our government can do for you. But I'm asking for your vote on the promise of what together we can do for America. For you and I are blessed by our Creator to live on the edge of a new era in the history of the world, a time of both great challenges, but also extraordinary opportunities. The opportunity at an America stronger than it has ever been. The opportunity to be a people with both the right skills and the right values. And the opportunity to see to it that the American dream doesn't just survive, but that it reaches more people and changes more lives than ever before. And that's what this election is about, and that is why I ask for your help and your support, so that together, this generation of Americans can see to it that the 21st century will also be an American century. Thank you for having me tonight. God bless you. Thank you.